You won't hear any booing in Austria. So George Russell is watching your videos.
If you're a Ferrari fan, you're used to heartbreak, aren't you?
I lost a lot of time there. I was lifting. I think he's never been this high in the Destructors Championship, Max Verstappen. Kim, I know you are in your Airbnb in Austria. Is it with or without AC?
It's without AC. Hardly anything's got air conditioning here.
Why is that? Why do we have ACs in Austria?
They've got a month at least of hot weather, and the air conditioners aren't that expensive. So we've had to sleep with windows open, and it's been very uncomfortable. In fact, hardly any of the hotels around here have it, and certainly very few apartments have it. It's hard work.
Well, yeah, it's hard work, but we're not going to complain, Kim, because we had an awesome race once again.
Oh, we did, and I love the fact that there was some indecision, there was lots of pit stops, there was plenty going on. I was in pit lane watching probably the most pit stops I've ever seen in my life. I don't often get this pit wall tabard, but I had it on today, and I think I missed the first pit stop of Lewis's, but then I saw everything else. It was a phenomenal thing to witness. They were coming and going left, right and centre. I loved it.
You just said you don't get this tabard to wear often. How does that work then? How do you get that tabard?
Well, I'm in a group of photographers, and you just apply for it every now and then. So I might get it 3 times a year. But I think I got it today for the very right race. Max coming in, Lewis. I was up the main players' end, and it was fascinating.
It was fascinating. They were important also. There was a 2 pit stop strategy for pretty much every team. But what do you think about that strategy of Red Bull? Because I just said that we had an amazing race. We had nearly the first victory of Max Verstappen. But that's only me, maybe, if they put him in earlier.
You have far better idea than me. I'm too close to the action. I see things very close up, but I don't get the broad picture that you or even any of these people watching this podcast gets when they sit at home on television, because you're getting so much information. Watching
it from the live stream, I was surprised by the fact, because at some point they said on the radio to Max, box opposite George. And George obviously came in for the second pit stop. So he stayed out for, I think, 6 more laps. And obviously in those 6 laps, he lost a lot of time because his tires were done. And then when Max was on the fresh tires, he catched up. He catched up big time. But in the end, it wasn't enough. And I think if they pulled him in earlier, he could have won that race in front of 10,000 Dutchies.
Well, I can tell you that he was applauded enthusiastically when he was on the podium, because when I'm at tracks and Max is on the podium, I hear booing, but I was delighted to hear a huge round of applause when he was initially called up onto the podium to accept his trophy.
You won't hear any booing in Austria. I mean, that's Max Verstappen land. It's not necessarily the same as it used to be. Like 2 or 3 years ago, there were over 20,000 Dutchies. I think it's a little less this time, but still, it's great to see all this orange in the grandstands. And I have to say, as a Dutchie, I find it very special to see, over 10,000 people traveling 1,000 kilometers to cheer on their guy.
They were every seat full. It was fantastic to see.
Yeah, it's fantastic to see. And they saw a great show today. I mean, for the whole weekend. At first, there was the setback on Saturday when Max Verstappen crashed. But yeah, I think he did a brilliant race today, but it was just not enough to beat George Russell.
And he was effusive in enjoyment after the race. It's lovely to be around him, and I can tell you that in Parc Ferme, I was 2 meters from him. He takes his helmet off and he's looking straight at me. So I got some stunning pictures of that. And I always find George to be look. And when any driver wins, they're going to be pretty happy, and they're going to be quite engaging with photographers and video people, and that's what George is like. I think any driver in that situation. Kimi was good. Toto went up and gave Max a congratulation too, which is nice to see. I'm sure Toto would like to have Max perhaps in one of his cars at some point.
I always believe that Toto would love to have Max in his car, but I don't necessarily think he needs him at the moment, because when you have 2 drivers, who are on the podium pretty much every race or winning pretty much every race, Yeah, well, why would you need Max Verstappen? But you could tell, and I saw an interview from Toto Wolff. He had some very nice words about Max Verstappen. So he acknowledged greatness there.
Well, I can tell you that Toto Wolff pulled off one of the most remarkable feats I've seen in my life at a celebration ceremony tonight. He opened his bottle of champagne, ran towards us, held his champagne bottle over his head, and sprayed it backwards as he ran. I've not seen the likes of it in my life, and I take my hat off to the man. It was spectacular to watch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least the temperatures was nice to do it.
But you know what? The champagne on the podium is not served cold. It's served at room temperature.
Why is that?
On a cold day, I'm sure that's welcome. But on a hot day, I'm sure they would have loved to have had perhaps some cold, sticky stuff over them. But at least a cold drink. They didn't get that. They got a lukewarm drink.
It was a nice podium. 2 Mercedes cars on the podium, which the third, like Kimi Antonelli in this case, I think he was the quickest today. But, he ruined his qualifying. George didn't.
Yeah, and Kimi will learn a very valuable lesson, because you will never, ever fall for that twice. And look, at 19, you're not going to know every single rule. And from what I understand, he just didn't realise that wasn't double yellow. He didn't have to abandon the lap. And of course, George, being a more learned scholar, was on the money, and well done to George.
He got some criticism for, bailing out Kimi Antonelli, but I don't think it's necessarily Kimi Antonelli to blame for, because when you hear your engineer on the radio say, and who's telling you yellow, what do you do?
You're not going to keep your foot in, are you?
No, you're not. So I don't think it was fair to criticize Kimi Antonelli for what he did. But I have to say, it doesn't feel right when someone is doing his best lap of the whole weekend, like doing the pole lap, while there is a car in the wall. I don't think that was right. Are you familiar with MotoGP, Kim?
No. Tell me.
No. Well, we had the Dutch TT of Assen today. And when something like this happens in MotoGP or Moto2 or Moto3, so a yellow, for instance, in the dying seconds of qualifying, that means when someone else is improving his lap time, the lap time gets cancelled, because they say it's not right when someone else is improving while there is someone in the gravel or whatever, or there is a dangerous situation. So I think they have to have a look at those rules, I think.
When will that be?
Well, I don't know. I hope soon. FIA is paying an awful lot of money for safety, and it's a good thing that they do it like that. But yeah, Saturday didn't feel necessarily right. But hey, hats up to George. He did a great job, and he got some points back to Kimi.
And it makes the competition interesting. And of course, Piastri's now a point in front of Lando. I think Charles and Norris are the same. So we've got an interesting battle now. It's not a definite as to what we'll have at the end of the year. It could get very interesting come down those last few races.
Yeah, well, but then we also need Ferrari in the fight. And 2 weeks ago, after Barcelona, both of us were super pumped with Lewis Hamilton's victory. And I said, they can play a massive role in the championship fight, but then they keep performing like they did in Barcelona, and then 2 weeks after, it's completely the opposite. Like, they were nowhere today.
Is that Ferrari? Is that they get people excited and then they let them down? Look, this is such a short track. In qualifying, there's very small margins. If you're a Ferrari fan, you're used to heartbreak, aren't you?
Well, I think after all those years you do, yes, but it also shows how difficult it is to get it right with the balance of the car and everything. It's not easy, It's not easy to be there every single week, and that also shows like how impressive it is what Mercedes is doing and what Red Bull was doing all those years. So but I have to say, speaking of Red Bull, they did well. Like, they brought a massive upgrade package. And I have to say, they're heading towards the right direction, and coming to the conclusion that Max was in for the win today. I'm already looking forward to next week, I have to say.
Well, they picked the right weekend to shine because, of course, all the hierarchy were there, all the big players, Chilean Video, and is that how you pronounce his last name?
Jovica.
Okay. Mark Mateschitz was there, Oliver Mintzlaff. Yeah, it was all the bigwigs.
Yeah, of course, it's the home race, and I think it's one of the well, most special occasions of the year for Red Bull. But it's always 2 big weeks in a row for Red Bull Racing. I remember last year when we were in Spielberg, it was, you had the crash with Kimi Antonelli and Max Verstappen, but Red Bull was not performing well at that stage. And the week after we had Silverstone, and you could tell in Austria already, like, there was so much stuff going on. All the hierarchies were there, but the pressure on Christian Horner back then was enormous. It was gigantic. And we all know what happened the week after. And now, I wouldn't say we have a similar situation. I would say it's the other way around. Like Red Bull is catching up at the moment, but still, it's special weeks for Red Bull Racing because they would love to keep Max Verstappen, and Max Verstappen he doesn't give his commitment yet. My gut feeling is telling me he will do that pretty soon.
I mentioned Mark Mateschitz. Have you met the man?
I've seen him many times at the track. Yes,
he's a cool dude. He's a really cool dude.
Yeah.
Like he's worth a lot of money. And today he always dresses just very level, down to earth. Same as CEO of Red Bull, Oliver Mintzlaff. In fact, I had a chat with Oliver on the grid today. I said, I really admire your sense of downplaying. It's always nice gear, but he just dresses smoothly. And I had a chat with Mark's girlfriend, Victoria Swarovski. She's a class lady too. I've got these lovely pictures of her on the grid too. And it's nice when these important people in this sport play up to your lens. It makes my job a whole lot easier.
Pro Color Collision. It reflects when it's the work of a pro.
Let's keep this between us and the kid on the bike.
And George Russell watches my videos. I caught up with him in the F2 paddock to ask him about this story. We spent a bit of time chatting. He told me at the age of 11 he was sleeping in a car with his mother so he could race.
I want to go back to George because I remember something, Kim. What is this all about?
Well, there's a story here. It was Thursday night. I'd done some shooting out on the grid and I came back around to see George with his photographer doing a shoot. And I put my camera up and I took a couple of frames and I get one of the crew from Mercedes, oh, Kim, please don't use those pictures. We're doing something where there's a product or whatever. I said, okay, no worries, I won't. And I stood there for a bit and they finished their shoot. Then George said, hey, I'm getting all your content served up to me by the algorithm. And I said, well, that's great. And we walked a bit for a chat. And I said, what do you want me to say? Because you've told me that. I'm going to have to say something on my video. And he said, all right, I'll watch your videos. So this is what I did. I just worked it in.
So George Russell is watching your videos.
Yeah, and I'll give you another funny story. It was Parc Fermé qualifying, I can't remember where. It was just after the Horner affair happened. And I was standing next to him and he toweling himself down. I was about 2 meters away and I'd stopped taking photos. And he came over and said, I watched your video about Horner last night. I thought, right, that's really bizarre because you never expect a driver to interact with you when you're photographing them for the world stage. So yeah, it was quite a funny moment. He said, oh yeah, it wasn't just him, it was, Carmen and I watched your video in bed last night. I love it.
Are they also watching our podcast, you think, Kim?
I don't know. I said, well, I saw him Sunday morning, this morning, and I said, oh, by the way, you're in that video on Thursday night. I'll have to watch that. So I hope he does. George, thanks for watching.
You like him, You like George?
I like him a lot. He's a straight shooter. He always reminds me a bit of a school prefect. Knows all the rules, very straight up and down the line. But I like him. I think he's a bit of a character.
Well, that speaks for George. I think that he knows the rules. You saw what they brought to him on Saturday. Only knowing the rules. And remember, those guys are driving around with 300 kilometers an hour. And while he's lifting, he already says, I lost a lot of time there. I was lifting. And I was like, yeah, that's politics. That's high level politics there. But fair play to him.
Now, do you think he noticed the drones in action this weekend?
I don't know if the drivers noticed. I did, and a lot of people did on the live stream. I have to say, Kim, that was super cool.
They have a different drone that worked the back of the track to the one that was up and down pit lane. This is the one in pit lane, and even the last corner. So it's a bit smaller, I understand, than the other one. And I was told today that Red Bull lent F1 their drone for this weekend. One of the drones was a loaner at no charge, but yeah, it's a Dutch company behind the big one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's called Dutch Drone Guards, and they developed a drone together with Red Bull. That reaches speed to, I would say, I think 340
350
kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
350 already.
It's
Yeah, okay,
savage.
yeah. Well, you need a quick one, to catch up with those Formula One cars, because if they come out of that corner like where they did it with the drone, they are close to 300 kilometers before that next left turn. But I know there is someone who was pushing through it for years already to get a drone involved in Formula One. That comes with a lot of rules, Keep in mind, those $1 million cars. When a drone, for instance, crashes on the track, and the cars run into it, that costs an awful lot of money. So teams are, there's not an insurance who is taking care of that, I would say.
Look, it'll cost money, but it'll also cost embarrassment if that happens. And it just depends on how good the technology is. But I like the idea, and I think you have to keep trying new things. I haven't seen the telecast. No, I did. I saw a couple of things in our media centre. We have these whopping great screens, as you know. And occasionally I saw the replay this evening, and I'd see this shot and I go, oh, that looks good. But I do happen to know they want to get audio from that as well. Now that, I can't imagine how difficult that is, because those things make a noise. And if they want to get the audio of the cars, I don't know how that would work, but I'll be very keen to see how they solve that technologically wise.
We saw some great action. I remember, the battles between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. I enjoyed those battles so much today, like I did in the past. And it's good, because we haven't seen that for quite a while. And now we see Max and Lewis battling it out, week after week.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. And then you're seeing this action from, what is it? How many meters away? 6, 7, maybe 10? With a flying drone. Yeah, I love it. I'm all up for it.
And the other thing I love is the cameras in the bell helmets. Oh, it's such an amazing thing to be able to see the vibrations, the fact that the driver's moving his head backwards and forwards. I absolutely love it. Now, on a different point, I understand Max has now moved to P8 on the Destructors Championship.
I think he's never been this high in the Destructors Championship, Max Verstappen, but he causes a lot of damage this year.
Well, Saturday's was a biggie, wasn't it?
Not his fault, I think. It wasn't necessarily Max's fault. Well, it wasn't his fault, because Red Bull took the full blame for it. Something went wrong with his rear wing once again. They already had that problem before. Max was complaining about it already during the lap, that his rear end was all loose. Yeah, it costs another $246,000, Kim.
That's a couple of nice private aircraft flights.
For instance, Max needed a new rear wing, new rear suspension, and a new barge board. Yeah, there was also some damage for Charles Leclerc this weekend, $150,000 again. He's also up there, Charles. He's sixth in the championship when it comes to damage.
And he hasn't had a win this year. When was his last win? Do you remember?
That could be a good question for everybody home. And we give away another. We do a signed Charles Leclerc cap. What do you think of that?
Have you got one?
I will manage to get one for sure. Silverstone.
Oh, you're bloody well connected. You are.
I put some pressure on my shoulders right now. But we gotta make that happen. You know what? When was the last victory of Charles Leclerc in Formula One? They have to send the right answers to the email address below, and we'll pick a winner, and they get us. And maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a special one for Silverstone, because that's what teams do in Silverstone. Silverstone is one of the biggest races of the year.
No, it is the biggest race in terms of crowd numbers, over 500,000.
And then teams do a lot of special liveries or special caps or whatever, so maybe it's a special one, who knows. But I'm looking forward to that one, Kim. When are you flying to London or to England?
I go Monday. Well, by the time people are watching this, I'm probably on a plane. I spent a couple of nights at the circuit at those apartments. I thought I'd come and have a look at those at Maggots and Beckett's. Then I go to Milton Keynes and endure that long ride home every night from the track. And Thursday's all right, but Friday and Saturday are a bit of a grind. But you've got that many people at the track. What are you going to do? Now, I will say something here that a few people this weekend told me that Jonathan Wheatley will be announced as Aston Martin team principal. And two people said it's going to happen at Silverstone. So I don't know if that's the case. I said earlier in the year that he was to get this gig with Aston Martin, but I'm just not sure that the timing is this weekend. But if it does happen, you heard it from me.
You're so cocky sometimes, Kim. But yeah, and remember Canada. Remember Canada? That Jonathan Wheatley's name was there, and they said maybe they said back then it was a mistake from the promoter. Maybe it wasn't a mistake.
That was
maybe
crazy,
he was supposed
wasn't
to come
it?
to Montreal.
Yeah. It's all fascinating, and the ups and downs in this sport. And you hear a lot of things, because it's very hard to keep a secret, isn't it, in Formula One? As soon as you get two people knowing something, they let slip accidentally, sometimes on purpose. It's hard to keep a secret.
It's funny you say that. I listened to a podcast last week with Liam Lawson. It was a very interesting one, and I think it was the first time ever that he spoke about his situation last year in Red Bull Racing. And well, you know, Kim, that we broke the story about Liam Lawson getting swapped for Yuki Tsunoda, and he opens up about the situation. He said, you know, there's a conversation between two people, and then minutes after, it's already leaked to the media. He said it's quite ridiculous. You could tell from his face, like how does that work in an organization?
Somebody told me on at this race weekend that he said you don't know who to trust. And also that same podcast, and forgive me, I don't know what podcast it was, but I have seen a couple of notes on it, that Lando Norris in that same series said that F1 made him feel lonely.
I can imagine, to be honest, and it's very difficult to know who you can trust, because when people tell you something, they always, you know, they do it with a purpose, and they want something in return. That's why they tell you people. Like me, I'm a journalist in Formula One. People tell me stuff, but you know, eight times out of 10, you don't do anything with it because it's not completely right, or maybe they have some bad intentions.
Well, you're not sure. Maybe you haven't got a second source to confirm it.
Of course, yeah. Then you go out there and check stuff. But there's a lot of things. There's a lot of rumors in Formula One. Like you, for instance, now with Jonathan Wheatley, I have no clue. Maybe it's the case. Maybe not. Well, I think we find out this week. I think it will happen at some point eventually. But yeah, it would make sense, if I'm being completely honest, to present them in Silverstone. It's their home race at the end.
They do need some good news too. They're struggling down the back, and they were very close to the 107% rule in qualifying.
Yeah.
I think it was 106.4%.
Yeah, but he must be fed up with that at some point, right? Surely. I mean, he gets an awful lot of money from Aston Martin, but there is a reason that there are rumors that Fernando Alonso might leave Aston Martin this year and go back to Alpine, to Flavio Briatore, the guy who used to work with many years.
Well, I understand. You don't want to be trolling around the back of the pack in an embarrassment of a car. And I guess once they bring these upgrades to the track, he'll get a better idea of whether or not they're making any headway. And if they're not, what's the point of hanging around? Just pedaling a bicycle into the wind is going nowhere.
Yeah, well, he loves it. He loves Formula One, but surely not in this fashion.
I agree, and he needs a challenge. He's not in it for the money. The money's nice, but I'm sure he'd take less money for a championship.
Yeah, and maybe a nice Gucci suit next year. Who knows?
Instead of Boss.
You were just mentioning, Kim, and that made me curious. You're checking some apartments in Maggots and Baggets. What do I have to make out of that?
I can tell you some of the drivers stay in those apartments because they're right on the track. And I
think I saw them last year, and I was like, can you imagine staying here in this apartment, because they are very modern and very luxury, and then this view at Maggots and Baggets, it's like a wet dream for Formula One fans.
But I think those apartments that are right on the track are given over for corporates, but I think you can rent one behind and just use it for accommodation. Anyway, I'll know this weekend. I'll do a video about it, and I'm also going to Clarkson's pub. I'm going to review his restaurant again, and to his brewery.
Ooh, so you have a busy schedule this week.
Yeah, I got a very full Tuesday, but my video about his pub last year did like 700,000 views, I think, maybe 1 million. So I know there's an appetite for it, and he's done a lot lately, and of course he's got that health scare, and I get to interview the butcher, Charlotte, I think her name is. Yeah, which is pretty cool.
Where are you staying? Because you said Austria is always difficult. Where are you staying in Silverstone? Close to the track? That's pretty much impossible.
For the race weekend, I have to move back to Milton Keynes at the Moxie, which I love because the air conditioning's fantastic, and there's some restaurants around it. But Milton Keynes, not the best place. It's soulless. Yeah. Is it soulless? Maybe.
Very much so. Yeah, I agree. We don't have that many people now, but
look,
exactly.
You're never going to make everybody happy, but we got to be there, and I quite like that hotel. It's a fun, funky sort of place.
Yeah, and for the second week in a row now, Kim, we had to record the podcast remotely, but next week, probably in the Moxie, we do it together again.
Let's look forward to that, and I will have some more stories, as you will have.
I would say, like always, because remember, Kim, whenever it happens in the paddock,
you hear it first here on Paddock Access.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, guys. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Ciao.